Your brain can't tell the difference between a vividly described morning and one you actually lived. That single glitch in human cognition explains why two people can sit down with the same blank notebook, write for the same 20 minutes, and walk away with completely different neurological fingerprints. One of them will make decisions tomorrow that align with the life they want. The other will rehearse the exact architecture of everything going wrong, and their body will respond as if it already has. The split starts with a question most people never think to ask. What is journaling actually doing to the tissue between your ears? When you write about a problem, a conflict at work, a relationship falling apart, a bill you can't pay, your body mounts a stress response. Muscles tighten, heart rate ticks up, the pen moves and your physiology follows because language activates the same circuits that experience does. Describe a fight with your partner in enough detail, and your blood pressure shifts as if the argument is happening right now, at your desk, with your coffee getting cold beside you. This is useful exactly once. Writing about a difficult event shortly after it happens helps you process it. There's solid research behind that. Expressive writing about trauma, done in structured sessions, can reduce doctor visits and improve immune markers. But the key word is structured, bounded, temporary. Most people who journal about problems do something very different. They return to the same wounds morning after morning. Tuesday's entry reads like Monday's. The words change slightly. The emotional rehearsal stays identical. Each session becomes a repetition, and repetition is how the brain builds automatic responses. You're training pattern recognition to scan for threats that match what you wrote about. The journal becomes a flight simulator for worst-case scenarios, and you're logging hours every single day. So what happens on the other side of that notebook? Picture someone who writes a single page each morning, describing their ideal day as if it already happened, past tense, specific. I woke up at 6:30 and the apartment was quiet. I made coffee and sat by the window for 10 minutes before opening my laptop. The meeting at 11 went well. I said what I meant, and the room responded. No affirmations, no vision boards, just a plain concrete description of a Tuesday that went the way they wanted it to. The specificity matters more than the optimism. When you describe a scene with sensory detail, the temperature of the coffee, the sound of the chair sliding back, the particular feeling of saying something clearly in a room full of people, your brain encodes it using the same machinery it uses for episodic memory. The line between "this happened" and "I described this happening" gets blurry at the neural level. And blurry in this case works in your favor. Researchers at UCLA found that vivid mental simulation activates motor and sensory regions consistent with actual performance. Athletes have known a version of this for decades. Mental rehearsal of a free throw improves accuracy in measurable ways. The journal version is slower, quieter, and less dramatic than a sports psychology session. It also covers the full texture of a life rather than a single physical skill, which makes it stickier. The person writing their ideal day is building something that functions like a behavioral template. When 11 o'clock arrives and they walk into that meeting, there's a faint groove already cut. The brain recognizes the pattern, the room, the moment of speaking up, the cadence of a conversation that goes well, because it's been described before. Described in enough detail that the recognition system treats it as partially familiar. Familiarity changes everything about how you respond to a moment. Unfamiliar situations trigger vigilance. Your attention narrows. You default to safe defensive choices. Familiar situations let you operate from a wider cognitive bandwidth. You notice more. You respond with less friction. The ideal day journaler walks into their afternoon carrying a faint sense of having done this before, and that sense, even though it was manufactured on a page at 6 in the morning, changes which version of themselves shows up. Now here's where the gap between the two approaches turns into a canyon. The problem journaler and the ideal day journaler aren't just thinking different thoughts. Over weeks and months, they're becoming different decision makers. Every morning, repetition is a vote. The problem journal casts votes for a self that is besieged, reactive, scanning for what might go wrong. The ideal day journal casts votes for a self that moves through situations with something that looks, from the outside, like quiet confidence. Neither person decided to change their identity, the journal did it for them, one page at a time, below the threshold of conscious awareness. Behavioral researchers describe identity as the accumulation of small actions, rather than a single declaration. Each journal entry functions as a micro-action, a moment where you either rehearse the problem or rehearse the solution. The compound effect over 90 days is visible in how people talk, what they notice, and which opportunities they pursue. Someone running worst-case simulations every morning develops a subtle flinch response to new possibilities. Someone running ideal day simulations develops a subtle lean toward them. The flinch and the lean are both invisible to the person experiencing them. They just feel like personality. Critics raise a fair point. Writing about your ideal day sounds like self-delusion. You're describing a reality that hasn't happened. You're ignoring real constraints. And if the exercise becomes pure fantasy, I drove my Lamborghini to my private island. The criticism lands. Disconnected fantasy doesn't build behavioral templates. It builds disappointment. The version that works stays close to plausible. 1 degree removed from your current reality, a day that could actually happen if you made slightly better decisions than your average. The journal entry for someone in debt doesn't describe being wealthy. It describes a Tuesday where they checked their account without that familiar chest-tightening dread, made a payment on time, and felt the specific relief of watching a number go down by even a small amount. That's a scene their brain can encode as achievable. The gap between current reality and written reality is narrow enough to cross, and crossing it feels like recognition rather than fantasy. This is where problem journaling fails most quietly. Writing about problems feels productive. It feels like you're being honest facing reality, doing the hard work of self-examination. And that feeling of productivity is the trap, because the brain doesn't distinguish between analyzing a problem and reinforcing it. Each detailed description of what's wrong is at the circuit level a rehearsal. You get better at the thing you practice. If you practice describing dysfunction every morning, you get exquisitely good at noticing dysfunction everywhere you look. The ideal day approach doesn't ask you to ignore problems. The problems are still there. The shift is in which channel gets the morning bandwidth. The 20 minutes when your mind is most open to suggestion and your attention hasn't yet been fractured by email and notifications and the 100 small fires of a regular day. That window is a resource. Both approaches spend it. Only one spends it on construction. There's a study from the University of Zurich that tracked how future-oriented thinking affects goal pursuit. Participants who described future events in vivid episodic detail, as if living through them, showed increased commitment to goal-relevant behavior in the following weeks compared to those who simply listed goals or reflected on obstacles. The mechanism is encoding. A listed goal is semantic information, stored like a fact. A described experience is episodic information stored like a memory, and memories influence behavior more directly than facts because the brain treats them as evidence of what's possible. You've experienced this without a journal. Think about a trip you planned in detail, researching restaurants, imagining the walk from the hotel to the waterfront, picturing the specific meal you'd order on the first night. By the time you arrived, the city already felt half familiar. You navigated it with less hesitation than a place you'd visited before, but never imagined in advance. Your planning created a pseudo-memory, and that memory made you braver, more curious, more willing to turn down an unfamiliar street. The Ideal Day Journal does this for ordinary life. Every morning, you arrive in your own day with a faint map. The map isn't rigid. The real day will diverge in dozens of ways. That divergence is fine. The point was never prediction. The point was priming. You primed your attention to scan for moments that match the template, rather than moments that match your fears. After 90 days, the two journalers live in what feel like different worlds. Same city, same job, same relationships. One of them keeps finding evidence that things are hard, complicated, and stacked against them. The other keeps finding small openings, moments where the right word at the right time changed the temperature of a room. Both are correct about what they're finding. The journal trained their filters, and the filters determined which slice of an infinitely complex reality became visible. The notebook is the same. The pen is the same. The 20 minutes are the same. The question the page asks you every morning, what are you going to rehearse today? That's the variable that compounds. And by the time you realize it's been compounding, the person reading back through those early entries already feels like someone else wrote them.